Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering massive layoffs at woke car companies making electric vehicles. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from NotTheBee.com, General Motors is laying off 1,300 workers as Chevy closes its Chevy Bolt production. Not going to make the Chevy Bolt anymore. From Breitbart, Joe Biden's green energy flop. Automakers realize Americans are not buying electric vehicles. From NBC News, GM to lay off 1,300 Michigan workers as vehicles end production. The largest layoffs were expected. They included 945 workers at Orion Assembly who build Chevrolet Bolt models, which are ending production after this year. And it's not just layoffs. They're cutting back massively on production of electric vehicles. Ford cuts planned 2024 production of electric F-150 Lightning in half. Those are trucks they're not selling as well as expected, so they've cut their production back massively. And we only find out about it because Ford told its suppliers for the electric F-150 that they just can't move these vehicles the way they thought they could. Suppliers need to know because they produce parts and provide the inputs that go into the vehicles that then can get assembled and then hopefully sold. And they are selling some, but it's much less than they thought. In addition to that, Ford is cutting investment by $12 billion because consumers are just not buying the vehicles they thought they might buy. This is despite a $7,500 tax credit offered by the federal government, plus a reduced 3.9% annual percentage rate for 5 years to finance the vehicles, also subsidized by the government. But even with all those billions in subsidies, the woke agenda of pushing electric vehicles just isn't working. Back in 2021, Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm talked about her Chevy Bolt, and she said the Biden administration was investing billions in promoting electric vehicles. The Detroit Press gave a glowing review of Biden's approach. General Motors, often a target for former President Donald Trump to go after on Twitter, is finding the opposite to be true under President Joe Biden. In August of last year, Biden spilled the beans about GM's plans for a future all-electric Corvette, creating social media buzz across Twitter. And he's done it again. Yeah, he did do it all right. The folks at GM are now laying off 1,300 employees. More than 900 of them are from the Orion Assembly plant that manufactured the Chevy Bolt electric car, getting discontinued after this year. From NBC News, General Motors plans to lay off about 1,300 workers in Michigan starting early next year, due to vehicles they produce ending production, the company disclosed in state documents. So now it's about Christmas time. We're at the end of December, and now they're putting out an announcement. They couldn't have figured this out a few months ago and given people a little bit more notice. No, they can't, because the sales on these things must be absolutely horrendous, causing the company to take an extreme action. The final production date is scheduled for the week of December 18th. That's pretty soon. This article came out December 15th. The final production date at this plant is scheduled for the week of December 18th. That's just a few days later. Layoffs won't start until January 1st. Well, that's very close to now. GM says it will retool Orion to build electric trucks. The plant is expected to come back online in late 2025. So about 2 years from now, if they can possibly sell electric trucks. Ford can't seem to sell its electric trucks quite as well as they would have hoped, cutting their planned production for next year in half. But sure, in 2 years, I'm sure as long as these people wait around and don't mind not getting a paycheck, they'll be able to make electric trucks. Hopefully they're not holding their breath for that and they can go on and find other jobs. The other 369 workers to be laid off are at GM's Lansing Grand River Assembly and Stamping Plant, which will no longer produce the Chevrolet Camaro. GM had previously announced the end of that vehicle, but not how many employees would have to be laid off at the plant, which continues to produce Cadillac sedans. From Breitbart, Joe Biden's green energy flop, automakers realize Americans are not buying electric vehicles. After investing billions into a green energy agenda mimicking President Joe Biden's federal rules, American automakers are quickly learning that Americans are not buying electric vehicles at the rates they expected. A comprehensive report in the Detroit Free Press details how the latest data reveals that while the Biden administration is pushing hard for automakers to turn out EVs, electric vehicles, car companies are unable to sell the models. Data from Edmunds.com shows that in September 2022, for example, electric vehicles sat on dealership lots for just 21 days before they were sold. Today, electric vehicles are sitting on dealership lots for 65 days. Automakers, as Breitbart News reported, are well aware of the issue. Tesla, General Motors, Mercedes-Benz, and Ford have all started slow-walking their rapid EV production plans. In September, most notably, Ford announced it would be pausing construction of a $3.5 billion electric vehicle battery plant in Marshall, Michigan. Ford drew fierce backlash from locals and lawmakers because the plant would have the automaker collaborate with China's contemporary Amperex technology company, linked heavily to the Chinese Communist Party. General Motors CEO Mary Barra told investors in October that the automaker is abandoning its goals to produce 400,000 EVs from 2022 through mid-2024. Similarly, GM will delay retooling its plant in Orion Township, Michigan to build EV pickup trucks. We covered that just to the end of 2025. Meanwhile, Tesla has seen a dip in net income, which came in at $1.85 billion in the third quarter. At the same time, in 2022, net income for the electric automaker was $3.29 billion. As a result, Tesla is planning to delay its production plant in Mexico. At Mercedes-Benz, EVs are so hard to sell that the automaker is having to effectively put them on clearance at enormously discounted prices to get them off dealership lots, according to Business Insider. Meanwhile, at Mercedes-Benz, which is having to discount its EVs by several $1,000s just to get them into customers' hands, isn't mincing words about the state of the EV market. And keep in mind, Business Insider is kind of a lefty publication. Quote, "This is a pretty brutal space," CFO, who is the chief financial officer, Harold Wilhelm, said on an analyst call. "I can hardly imagine the current status quo is fully sustainable for everybody." But Mercedes isn't the only one. Almost all electric vehicle product is going for under sticker price these days, and on top of that, some EVs are seeing manufacturers' incentives of nearly 10%. Even with massive taxpayer-funded subsidies spearheaded by the Biden administration, EVs will remain a costly expense for America's working and middle class, which rely on their vehicles immensely. The average electric vehicle in October cost nearly $60,000 without the Biden tax credits, more than $10,000 above the average industry price, according to figures published by the Detroit Free Press. In addition to high prices, EVs have enjoyed a stream of bad public perception for some time. Between the long hours of charging the vehicles, the lack of charging stations across the United States, and the fact that the biggest proponents of green energy policies continue to drive gas-powered cars themselves. Most recently, Biden's Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm took off on an EV tour across multiple states over a 4-day period to bring attention to the efficiency of the vehicles. The trip ended in chaos when the police were called as Granholm's team blocked a charging station to reserve it for the secretary because there were not enough stations available at the time. So they blocked it from the rest of the normal people because she's a government person and she's trying to push a fake agenda that these electric vehicles are productive and can be used on these great 4-day trips. Why not buy an electric vehicle? Well, not everybody has government personnel available to block everyone else from using the charging station that you're about to use. That's why you don't buy those vehicles. Republicans on the House Oversight and Accountability Committee have since opened an investigation into the matter. Then there is the not so small risk of EVs catching fire. Local firefighters in Colorado have said they still do not know how to best put out a fire involving an electric vehicle because the vehicle uses lithium-ion batteries. Quote, "We have fire agencies that are using tarps to cover cars to help try to smother them, but it's not very effective," local firefighter official Doug Saba told CBS Colorado in August. So when your car catches fire, if you have an electric car, it's very likely they won't be quite sure how to put the fire out. I guess if your car catches fire, just do the normal thing and try to get as far away from it as possible, and hopefully it won't explode. They're trying water, but you need to have copious amounts of water, 20,000 gallons. Even then, once you put it out, it can rekindle and restart 24, 72 hours, or a week later. Our tactics as firefighters right now is to get the vehicle out of the house, get it out of our neighborhood, and we will investigate it in an open field. That doesn't sound very safe. And for all the good that Elon Musk does, and he's so brilliant and all that, I'm not sure why he can't come up with a great way to put out electric vehicle fires. I'm sure he's looked into it because it is something he should be worried about, and I'm sure he is worried about in his business. But if he hasn't come up with a viable solution, there probably technically is not a viable solution. Many American auto workers have been sounding the alarm on Biden's rapid transition to EVs for quite some time. Production of electric vehicles takes far less manpower to actually make the vehicles, which means there will be less jobs for people in the automotive industry who manufacture these vehicles. And there's also a tremendous reliance on the Chinese Communist Party for critical components of making the electric vehicle batteries. Thus, auto workers see their jobs going out the door, which is absolutely going to happen. Quote, I think electric vehicles are going to wipe us out, 28-year-old Whitney Walsh says, who works at Stellantis' Portless Parts Distribution Center in Beaverton, Oregon. Telling E&E News recently, electric vehicles don't need spark plugs. What else? Oil filters. We sell a lot of those. If we don't have all those parts, I feel like we don't have a lot to do. Another auto worker said that it's almost inevitable that his job will be eliminated if the Biden administration gets its way on electric vehicles. Over at Ford Motor Company is dialing back planned output of the electric F-150 Lightning pickup by half next year because of changing market demand. People don't want them. That's the problem. It's not that no one's buying them. It's that it's not a viable product unless masses of people buy them, unless people stop wanting to buy gas-powered vehicles and instead now want electric-powered trucks. But it's not happening. It's a steep pullback of a high-profile nameplate the automakers spent most of this year working on to build in larger numbers. Those kinds of scaling up things to do when you're going to increase production at a manufacturing plant is a tremendous amount of investment. It's not trivial. It takes a lot of planning. It takes people. It takes machinery. And now they're having to cut the production in half. That's drastic. According to a planning memo attained by Automotive News, Ford has told suppliers to prepare for an average volume of around 1,600 Lightnings a week at its Rouge Electric Vehicle Center in Dearborn, Michigan, starting in January 2024. It had planned to assemble an average of 3,200 a week toward an annual goal of 150,000 vehicles. In the meantime, output of gasoline-powered pickups at plants in Michigan and Missouri is expected to be essentially unchanged, the company said in the memo. Ford, in a statement Monday, said it will continue to match production with consumer demand, which is to say, they will not ramp up production to try to meet a demand that doesn't exist. They're not just going to make vehicles and stick them on parking lots because, while they've probably been doing a lot of that already, they can't afford to continue to do that. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.